Okay. Hello and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. It is about 5 minutes past 1 here, and we're live on a digital platform. Present, we have a whole host of folks, myself, Liz Mealy, and Bonnie Katz and Adam Yoder from the Finance Committee. We have Skip Memmy and Chelsea Blair, both from Community Development, Molly Steele-Shimp from Human Resources. We have the Mayor, Derek Slaughter. We have IT on. We have Joe Pavlak from Finance and Nick Grimes from the Treasurer's Office, Kayla Drummond from Recreation, Janice Frank. Hi, Janice. It's always nice to see you. As the city clerk, and then I see Vince Palizzi and I know Randy Allison are both listening in as well. And we have a couple of guests here from SUPA Signs, Ms. Eleanor Evans and Mr. Daniel Cohen. Okay, and actually, you know what? I think I am going to move things around on the agenda just a little bit so that Ms. Evans and Mr. Cohen don't need to be here for the whole meeting. So let's get started with item number 3 on our agenda. We do have 7 items on today's agenda, but item 3 is a resolution to approve a community development a CDBG CY multipurpose public service project. Mr. Memmy?
Thank you, Liz, and good afternoon, everybody. We're bringing back to Finance Committee the SOFA sign project, which we presented 2 weeks ago, and we took the questions and the issues that were presented by the members of the committee at that meeting to Mr. West and his team, and we modified the contract, I think, to address all the issues that members of the Finance Committee had. This project is for 5 signs at $12,000 each, totaling $60,000. I'm not going to repeat everything that we said the last time. We are looking to locate these signs in the LMI areas to increase equitable access to information in the city. We'll be able, if this project is approved, we will be able to transfer important information to its residents that will help mitigate COVID-19 and prevent, hopefully, future issues such as the pandemic that we're dealing with today. With that said, we've asked Mr. Cohen and his team to be here to try to answer any questions that you may have about the specifics of the signs. So at this point in time, I also wanted to let the Finance Committee know that this contract has been reviewed by Mr. White, and all of his questions have been addressed. And we are here to try to answer your questions and move this project forward to council. With that, Ms. Mealy, we're here to answer yours and all the members of council and the committee's questions. Thank you.
Sounds good. Hey, Skip, just for our information, can you go over with us what questions Solicitor White had and what those answers were?
Off the top of my head, I think he was concerned about in the contract originally had been language relevant to the 20% being shared with the city to be after a certain period of time where costs would be taken out. The language has been changed so that the 20% partnership is from day one. from the first advertising dollar going forward. Also, the language was changed to address that we will engage in discussions after 18 months as to whether we were going to continue with the project. There is the language that was in originally was that it was to automatically revert to an additional 5 years. That language has been removed, and therefore the discussion for moving forward with this project is after 18-month review. One of his other questions, I believe, was about and I believe this is one of the finance committee's questions also, was the data collected, or was there cameras as part of the kiosks? And that answer is no. Whatever data is collected, I believe is, and I will defer to Mr. Cohen to explain it much more cogently than I can, is data collected by people passing by the kiosk, not collected by cameras. I don't understand the technology well enough to be able to answer that, but I believe those were the biggest questions that Mr. White had, and hopefully we addressed them. We addressed them to his satisfaction. Hopefully we've addressed them to the finance committee's concerns. Hopefully that answers your question, Liz.
Thanks, Skip. Yeah, that gives me something to go on here. Adam and Bonnie, I'll defer to you guys first. I know that we all had questions about this item last week, but let me let you guys get started first.
Just make a statement. Skip, I think you realize that I'm really not a fan of this project for a couple of reasons. One of them, I don't, $60,000 may not seem like a lot of money to some people, but to us, it's a lot of money right now. Second of all, my other problem with this project was that it's a lot of human contact that has to be put into these elements, and we have trouble keeping our website up to snuff, and to have somebody in charge of constantly putting projects and other things from the city onto these kiosks, I find it would be very problematic, and I don't think it would be kept up to date, and I think it would just make the public angry. And these are my two major things: money, and I don't think the human contact that is involved in this would be beneficial to us.
Okay, sounds good, Bonnie. Adam, did you have any? Bonnie, that was everything that you had to say?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Adam, did you have any further comments?
Yeah, I mean, Councilwoman Katz kind of hit a lot of mine as well. And I'll kind of speak to maybe more of the second thing that Councilwoman Katz had mentioned. We historically have, I think, struggled to keep up with this kind of stuff. The public information items that outface our website, that kind of thing. I mean, we're making progress on our website. It's up and running, but it's still very much a work in progress that I think we're still working through. On the IT end, our IT department's in transition. And I don't know what the future of that looks like. I think we're still figuring that out. If that hasn't figured out, I don't know what that looks like yet. I think that's going to be a critical component to making sure that information is relayed, updated correctly. And interestingly enough, I got a lot of feedback from the community on this item specifically over the past couple of weeks, since this was first in finance and then we tabled it at council. I think there's a lot more questions from the community with some similar things. A lot of the feedback they gave me was like, hey, interesting idea, but probably not worth the money or that kind of time as well. So I think there's some, from what I understand, some skepticism, I think, on this from the public as well. So, like I said 2 weeks ago, I'm glad to see that we're thinking through and trying to come up with some ideas. I'm not sure that this is just the right idea for us at this time, though. So that's kind of where my head's at. But Skip, Chelsea, thanks for going back, looking at our questions. Appreciate the effort you did to kind of address our initial questions, what have you. And we'll appreciate your continued efforts on other projects.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the input, Adam. I mean, Skip and Chelsea, I was not a huge fan of this project last or 2 weeks ago either. And it continues to be a little troublesome for me as well. I'll ask some questions just to kind of further our understanding. And then of course, we'll send it on to the full body of council and there probably will be more questions there. The termination clause in the existing contract is 30 days with substantial failure by the other party. There's no termination for, generally speaking, most city contracts, we have termination basically for no cause or, or some sort of clause that indicates if we were to terminate early for some reason, what the damages might be. Something like that. I don't see anything like that in this contract. Can you talk to me a little bit about what the penalties would be if we went through if we were to contract with SUFA signs and we went through a year with the SUFA signs and found them for some reason or another to really not be a good fit for us, not for anything that violated terms of the contract, but just because within the communities where we were putting them, something like that, they just weren't working out. And we wanted to pull them out. What would termination look like in that context?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Cohen to answer that question, if you can.
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing I would say is that we haven't had any communities so far who have asked to pull out our signs before their pilot period was up. So we've, by a large margin, had satisfied customers, and they range from large cities such as Miami to smaller cities such as Amherst. Since we haven't had any problem with this so far, and we've used pretty much a boilerplate contract, I would have to refer back to my team to see what a termination clause like that would cost. But I'm sure that if that was absolutely a deal breaker here, we could put something in the contract that was to everyone's satisfaction.
Got it. Thank you. Then next question is just so I'm struggling a little bit as somebody who has always hated advertising and doesn't own a television with the concept of putting up signs in neighborhoods that are, my reading of the contract is 80% of the time that the signs will display advertising sold by SUFA, correct?
That is correct for part of the screen. And firstly, I'd like to say thank you so much for having us here today. We're thrilled to be able to
we didn't let you talk first. I apologize.
Oh, no.
So why don't you introduce us? Actually, the polite thing to do, and I apologize that I didn't offer you this opportunity, would be to ask you to explain the product to us because we haven't had the benefit of someone from SUFA Signs telling us about the product previously. So if you want to give us a little bit of a discussion of the product first, and then we can get to my questions, that would be great.
Of course. My name is Daniel West Cohen. I'm the City Growth Manager of SUFA. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Eleanor Evans, who's on our operations team, but also has a wealth of city growth and product experience. I'm really thrilled to be speaking with you today. I'm a PA native myself, although I live in Brookline, Massachusetts now. If you're not familiar with SUFA, a little bit about our company. We're a proudly woman-founded and woman-led company. We were founded out of MIT's Media Lab in 2014. We were created with this product called the SUFA Bench, which was essentially a solar panel in the middle with 2 wood panels on the side. It got a lot of hype up here in Boston and in the state. The mayor liked it, the governor liked it. Then our founders wanted to create something that was more in the streetscape, so they came up with this idea of the SUFA sign. Basically, the SUFA sign is a community or neighborhood news feed designed to encourage smart cities. Basically, what we do is we believe in information equity. We believe in aggregating information, bringing communities together through news feeds, through events, through syncing with social media, by providing business openings on our platform and also advertisement amongst many other things. All of this is facilitated through what we call applets. They're basically apps that can be customized and put on your screen. Williamsport will also be able to customize their applets to create something that is completely tailored to their community. 2020 was obviously a tough year for everyone, but for us, it was our year of greatest growth because a lot of municipalities were using us to get messaging out to their local communities, whether it was in terms of COVID relief or whether it was in terms of economic relief, or updating their communities on changing transit schedules, or updating them on business openings, or changing business schedules, or even just bringing people together so that they knew what was going on in their community. And since then we've expanded all over the Eastern Seaboard. We're in Massachusetts, we're in New Hampshire, we'll soon to be in Providence, Rhode Island, we're in Miami, we're in Atlanta, we're soon gonna be in DC, we're in a couple cities in California, we're in Utah, we're in Detroit, we're also in Albany, New York, and we continue to grow as a lot of municipalities use us to reach their constituencies. We recognize that a lot of people have access to the internet or cell phones, but they might not necessarily have access to what's going on in their community. That's kind of where we come in, and that's what we try to facilitate. We try to bring that information together, the vital community information, and bring it to the people who need to see it, when they need to see it, where they need to see it. And in a nutshell, that's kind of who we are. But maybe, Eleanor, did I miss anything?
No, Daniel, I think that was a good overview. So thank you for that. The two things that I'll add, since I am on our operations team, one piece about our hardware is that we're completely solar powered. The signs are self-sustainable, so that we don't need to do any trenching. We don't need to connect to your electric grid or anything like that. The installation process is about 30 minutes long. And then the screen itself is also made out of e-ink technology. So that's the same material that Kindles are made out of. So the screen is actually black and white. It's electronic paper. So Liz, you mentioned concerns with advertising and that you're not a fan, which I completely understand. So I do just want to reiterate, the sign is not a traditional billboard. It does not look like a flashing like LED backlit piece of technology. It's very much like a community newspaper feel. And we do have a section for local businesses to be able to post updates about their offerings, any events that they're hosting, so on and so forth. I'm not sure if showing an image of the sign would be helpful to this group, since it sounds like people are unfamiliar with the product. But if Dan or I are able to share our screens, we'd be happy to show just a photograph of what the product looks like as well.
Sure. Josh, is that a possibility?
Yeah, they just need to click to share their display and it should work.
Awesome. Daniel, would you mind pulling up a photo?
Daniel, you're muted.
It says host disabled screen sharing. So you just need to allow screen sharing. I'd be glad to pull up the picture.
Stand by.
Sure.
While we're waiting for that, Liz, one of the things that we were able to discuss with Daniel is the fact that every department head would have the passcode to add any information they wanted to as necessary. So we don't have to filter everything down to one person to be able to maintain the information flow to these signs. And once data was added, there is a component of the signs that would sunset the data, so that, let's say we needed to have it up for 2 or 3 days. Well, at the 5-day mark, that data disappears automatically. No one has to go in and delete it from the sign. So it automatically deletes itself at the end of the sunset period.
So you're saying,
Daniel,
saying that the data, you're saying the data goes, you basically set up the sunset period when you input it?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. And we're live with the signs here. Now, Mr. Memmi, if I can return to you for one sec before I go back to Mr. Cohen with a couple of questions. Explain to me where the administration was picturing these being located in the city at this point?
We haven't specifically picked any locations. We were planning to locate them in the low to moderate income areas of the city, which pretty much is a good portion of the city. The sites have not been specifically picked at this point in time.
Got it. All right. And Mr. Cohen, it's a snappy looking product. I don't think anybody's arguing with that. And Ms. Evans. And it's nice. So help me to understand when we discuss the 80-20 split then on a sign like this. And both sides of the sign are your digital paper, or one side of the sign is digital paper and the other side of the sign is blank?
Actually, just one side of the sign is digital paper. The other side is a vinyl, and it can have a wayfinding portion on the back where we can create a custom design to the needs of Williamsport.
Got it.
When we speak about the 80-20 portion, we're essentially talking about this square right here. So the majority of the screen is for the city 100% of the time. The 80-20 split we're talking about is right here in this advertising block. So 80% of the time it'll go to advertisements, and 20% of the time it can go to back to the city for community messaging.
Got it. Okay. So, and then the remaining information is whether actual like kind of PSA type elements. That is to say, the remaining 3/4 of the screen that I'm seeing is what would be like a PSA sort of element, correct?
Exactly. It can be custom designed to your needs. So it could be local. It could be local updates. There could be transit information. There could be business information. There could be events. We really can make it close to whatever you'd like it to be.
Got it. And then help me understand so the city also is allowed to sell 20% of the advertising in that bottom corner of the screen, or presumably wherever it might be located. Does that mean that that's the city's revenue share, as you're calling it?
Yes, exactly. That'll go back to the city.
Okay, I guess I'm confused about my initial reading of the contract was that basically you guys sold all the advertising and we got 20% of the revenue. But then on closer reading, I came to the conclusion that what it actually was we could sell 20% of the advertising and then we got to keep that revenue. Is that closer to the truth?
The truth, I believe, would be that you can sell that space for advertising, and you'll get to keep 20% of that revenue. Everything is 80-20.
Got it. But understood.
If I can interrupt, there are potentially two different revenue streams.
Okay.
One is the 80-20 split of the advertising dollars. And then there's the 20% of the promotional area that the city can either use for nonprofits to advertise a fair or to advertise an event, or the city could market that space and sell advertising and collect all the advertising dollars that space generates, and there's no split with SOFA. So there technically is two different sources of revenue.
Okay. I did just hear
I don't
Mr.
mean to
Cohen
muddy the waters, but hopefully that explains it a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds, Mr. Cohen, as though we get 20% of the time to do whatever we damn well please with it, correct?
That's exactly right. I
Okay.
appreciate how you said that. Yes, exactly.
Okay. If we make any money on it, then we have to give you guys a cut, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we get a cut of any money that you make on the sign.
Exactly.
Okay. And give me an idea. I know this is an exceptionally ballpark figure. I'm sure that your advertising rates vary greatly between a city like Williamsport and a city like Miami. But what is your anticipated revenue on signage like this?
That's a great question. I would anticipate safely that you could see $3,000 annually per sign.
Got it. Okay, that helps me to understand a little bit. So your annual revenue on a sign-by-sign basis, I mean, obviously is higher in other areas, but you're not anticipating massive quantities of revenue on these signs for your company.
Well, massive is definitely a subjective, but I think we could safely say that we're looking at $3,000 annually per sign.
Got it. Yeah, that's fine. No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm actually, I mean, I'm asking because, right, we would want to understand that for the city's bottom line moving forward if we were to install
course.
signs like this. But I'm also asking because I think I'm trying to better understand the SUFA Signs business model.
of course.
And where you're generating revenue and what's happening in that quadrant. In part because I also want to understand my understanding from Mr. Memi. Talk to me a little bit about maintenance of these signs, how it's performed, when it's performed, to what extent the city is responsible for any sort of contribution to that.
Of course. The city is not responsible for any contribution of maintenance. Our program works that if you get 3 or more signs, and since Williamsport would be getting 5, they would obviously fall under this this clause, is that maintenance will be performed on a weekly basis, and that's done by independent contractors, and that's included in the cost.
Got it. Okay. So I know it's a lot of nitpicky stuff.
No, of course.
That I'm asking here. So effectively, we're paying you $12,000 for these signs. We anticipate the signs themselves to last the duration of the potential 7-year full contract, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In that time, we will have no additional expenditure related to these signs. But we may well see them effectively pay for themselves in the course of that time frame. And possibly more than that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Got it. And then additionally, the city provides, we could do wayfinding signage, something like that on the far side of the sign, on the paper side of the sign. And talk to me, the design elements, is that included in that $12,000 upfront cost, or are there additional costs for certain elements of design?
Absolutely. The wayfinding element is actually the back square of the vinyl. That's included in the cost because the signs in Williamsport will be they'll be sponsored signs. So a local, regional, or a national sponsor will sponsor the vinyl sign.
Got it. Okay, so on the flip side of the sign that we're currently looking at on the screen, there would be a square that would have a map, something like that, and at the bottom there would be a sponsorship element to it.
Exactly.
Correct. Okay. All right. Understood. And then if we wanted to change that material at some point, wayfinding signage, as we all know, is, especially in the age of COVID, not a static endeavor. If we wanted to change that component of the signage, would that be on our dime? Would we look for another sponsor? Would the sponsor's money continue to fund that updated signage? Sorry, just trying to think of all the questions here.
No, please don't apologize. That cost would most likely be on the city. Generally, that costs about $1,000 to change the vinyl. The initial one is included in the cost.
Got it. And then, so you're saying it would be $1,000 per sign to change the vinyl out, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, understood. All right, and then talk to me about the information on the side that I'm currently looking at. To what extent is that information sort of automatically generated? That is to say, I would assume that transit information would be linked to a transit website somewhere, right? So
Absolutely.
the city wouldn't be inputting its transit information if we were putting something like that on the sign. That information would be coming direct from the transit website, correct?
Absolutely. And I might even pass this question over to Eleanor because she has a lot of product experience, so she could probably explain it.
Sure.
Awesome. So if Williamsport ultimately did decide to work with SUFA, what we would do is we'd have a kickoff process that would last about 7 weeks. And during that time, we'd be setting up the screen layout aspect of the sign, as well as dealing with the vinyl and the site locations. So there's a bunch of deliverables that we'll tackle, but ultimately the screen setup falls under the applets that Daniel was mentioning earlier. Those applets are automated sources. So like you said, Liz, the transit would be completely automated. All we need is either a GTFS feed or an API, which would come from a transit agency.
So hang on one sec, Carolyn. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Josh, do we have that currently within our transit system?
We do have some of that currently, yes.
Okay, so that would be something that we could directly load into a sign if we chose.
We'd have to get some tech specs on this, on the signage. So haven't really seen anything on them yet, but yeah, we could, depending on the APIs.
Yep. So all we would need from the transit agency is a link to this API. You don't need to do any speccing. We have an engineering team that would do that. So they build out a full transit integration. If the city chose to run an events calendar or wanted to link up some Twitter accounts, again, we would integrate with all of that on our back end. So essentially what I would just ask from the city is the content sources for whatever applets they want to run on the screen. So whether that is, like I said, Twitter, events, transit, or community polling feature, all of that is pulled in automatically.
Sorry.
And that it comes
Sorry, I'm
from
actually on a city
Live
council meeting at
Online.
the same time I got pulled into on some signage stuff. But I'm back.
Josh, your audio is still on. I'm not sure if you intend to have it on. Okay, all right. I think we've eliminated the crosstalk there. All right, so understood. So
And
most
that's
of
the
the
entire
content,
right-hand side of the screen.
got it. And so the city would then just update the applets if we wanted to, and presumably there's some sort of interface where we can change out content. If we decide we want to drop the transit element, we could put events in that hole, correct?
Yep, that's exactly right. If you wanted to switch anything around, just let us know. We'll make that update on our back end for you. And then that local updates box where it says face coverings required, that is really the only manual upload aspect of the sign itself. We have an online platform called SUFA Talk. That's where you're able to upload a finished file image. So it could be a JPEG or a PNG file. That's typically designed on your computer, either through like Canva, which is an easy to use website, or Photoshop or something like that. And that's what directly is uploaded into that space there. If manual uploading is a concern, given the bandwidth of the city, we can always switch that out with another applet, which could be an automated content source. Or alternatively, we could run the city's or any other Twitter account in that section as well.
Understood. So there are a handful of options there. Okay. All right. And are there any ongoing services through SUFA that would cost the city money on an annual basis?
Not during your initial pilot period.
Okay. That being that full 7 years, or that being the initial 2-year period?
The initial 2-year period.
Got it. And after that point?
Well, certainly, normally we charge an annual renewal fee of $6,200 per sign, but because you have sponsorship and advertisement, it would be $2,000 per sign after year 2.
After the initial 2 years.
Yeah, so $2,000 per sign.
Okay, got it. There are cities that opt out of the advertising component?
Absolutely. Cities opt out of either the sponsorship or the advertising component. That increases the cost of the sign, and that also increases the cost of the annual renewal fee.
Talk to me about what the costs are if you are opting out of sponsorship and advertising.
If you're opting out of sponsorship and advertisement altogether, the cost of the sign is roughly $25,000 per sign, with the $6,200 annual renewal fee after the first year.
Got it. Okay. All right. Sorry, just writing that down here quick. All right. Okay. Then I think, thank you guys both very much for coming, because I think I understand the whole concept much better now than I did 2 weeks ago. I don't know exactly how that, what that means in terms of my opinion on it. I'm still sort of deciding there, but I definitely understand I understand it significantly better. And the signs are exceptionally cool looking. I will say that I share my colleague on the finance committee's concern that not so much that your signage isn't awesome and couldn't provide some benefit to the city, but that the city may not be ready to take advantage of that benefit, simply because concerned that we don't really have the staff in place that would help us adequately manage content on the sign in such a way that we would see any benefit from it within the next 2 years. And that, I think, is a conversation that we need to have amongst ourselves as an administration and a council to understand. Mr. Memi, I certainly appreciate that anyone within city government would be able to update the sign's content, but I'm actually not certain that will fix the problem. I'm a little afraid that might make it worse, because then once nobody's really responsible, but anybody could do it, I think we lose, the only element, which is somebody who is solely responsible for dealing with this and then can solicit content from other elements of government. Once we have a completely diffuse sort of access to the signage, I'm even more worried that we might not meet our obligations there. That said, we will discuss this in front of the full body of council on Thursday, and there are Eleanor and Daniel, there are 4 other members of council. So the finance committee represents the minority of the full body of council. So I'll be interested to see what turn the discussion takes there, because I think there are a number of options. And I don't know that the other members of council will feel as we do. But yeah, so I would regard myself as still perhaps a question mark in terms of this technology. It sounds as though Bonnie and Adam perhaps are no longer question marks. But thanks for this discussion so far today. Bonnie, Adam, did anything that I asked questions about jog anything that you'd like to discuss further? Or does anyone else on the meeting have any questions?
Only one more question. Skip, could we use CDBG funding down the road if this would pass and get implemented for renewal fees, changing of the maps, all the future costs that Liz had asked about and that Sofa Signs had mentioned? Or would we need to find that somewhere else?
Well, I would say that the potential exists that we could possibly use CDBG funding in the future. Right now I would be reticent to say a definitive yes, but the potential exists. And the other part of this is that I also found intriguing is that Williamsport would be the first community in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to have this product, this specific product, and it kind of puts Williamsport on the map a little bit and moving forward. I'm sure Daniel and his team would be promoting the Williamsport name through a lot of their marketing materials. So it was just another way to enhance Williamsport's image, so to speak.
Yeah. No, thanks for the info on the financial component, Skip. And I can certainly appreciate that. I think anytime the city can be, first to market with anything that helps differentiate us, I think those efforts need to be tied together in some kind of a comprehensive strategy for the city that we still don't have yet. But I'm hopeful that we will at some point. But I can appreciate those points. Yeah, I still simply come back to, I don't know who from the city is going to be the point person for this from a technological perspective, from, content, all that kind of stuff. We haven't had a good track record in the past. I mean, you can look to the 411 app, our website, and even CityBot, I mean, that was a short-term thing that helped us through last year, but I don't know where that landed, and what the results of that even look like, and then add to the fact that we continue to be shorthanded. That's concerning for me. I think this is a great product. If we had the ability to or track record to stay on top of it, I might be able to be swayed, but I'm not there. So.
Yeah, I think I think the issue of whether or not the city can handle its component of this is really the greatest issue as well.
Mhm.
It sounds likely, if nothing else, that the signs would be that the signs, as long as they included advertisements and sponsorships, would be a net financial wash for the city. That is to say that after that
Yeah.
initial investment, they wouldn't cost us anything and we wouldn't make anything on them, more than likely. But that said, if we aren't making the most of them in terms of communicating with people on the street, then there's really not a lot of benefit. And it just seems, having seen us now take on multiple, text citizen promotions, all sorts of things
Mhm.
like that haven't, and a 311 app, et cetera, that really haven't panned out. I need to understand a little better how this is actually going to work within city government before I'd be okay to back it. If, Derek and Skip and Chelsea, if you guys want to put your head together and figure out a plan that means that we know that there will be content on these, then I think that will change the discussion on Thursday somewhat dramatically from the sounds of things. But right now I'm not hearing that.
Liz, would it assist you guys to, I know Daniel and his team, they supplemented us a lot of additional information that we also did not include because we didn't want to overwhelm you as well. But they included all the applets that the city could potentially have. And in addition, displayed what SUFA Talk is and that kind of stuff. Would that assist at all?
I mean, I don't think that I think I've fleshed out my understanding of the signs enough for my needs. What I don't understand is how we're going to make use. It could be a very powerful tool for the city. But I have seen us not take advantage of several other very powerful tools. And so what I need to understand is how this time around it will be different. And that's not something that SUFA Signs can answer for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and Chelsea, I mean, just look at it this way. I mean, who, what, when, where, and how. I mean, a lot of those, to Liz's point, they're inward facing. They're things that we need to answer, and a lot of them, especially the who and how, we don't know the answers to those.
Okay. Thank you.
If I can add to this, the kiosks look absolutely incredible. They really do. They're very eye-catching. This concept has been done literally all over the world. Canada has done things like this on paper with smaller billboard type of things that people look at that are eye level. Europe has done the same thing. It's always trying to keep the public aware of what's going on in their communities. Liz and I have been on council for the longest, and we know the capabilities of our city, what our city has not been able to accomplish as far as keeping up with things like this that have to do with our website, anything that has come to fruition to keep our city informed. We know, as I said in the very beginning, the human element in our city is not there. If we had the human element that would take care of the input, I think there would be no qualms with this, because it is important to keep your people, your citizens informed of what's going on. I don't want, as I said in the beginning, again, I don't want to fall short on this and then get citizens angry at us because things are not being changed. They're not up to date. People get angry when they look at the website that's not up to date. So if we can't maintain a website that somebody's sitting at a desk and with input, how are we going to make sure that another piece of equipment is getting the same kind of information? That's the major problem. I think it's not your company. It's not what's being proposed to us. It's what we realize we are falling short of in our own city.
We keep saying website. What is there a certain part of the website we're looking at right now that needs updated?
Derek, nothing has ever been kept updated with the website. Nothing.
It's brand new right now.
I'm talking about website. Anything that has been proposed to us, as Adam said.
You're speaking historically, not currently. Everything right now.
Hey, Derek. Here's the feedback that I would give you, and I gave this to Spike too, not to get too far off the rails. It looks a lot better. It looks a lot better. The video aspect on there is all good, but it's as wordy And I think just, the searching through things, it's no different than the old one. So I think some of those elements are probably the next step in progressing through that. And I won't want to speak for Spike, but I think he's kind of on the same page. And I think that's where he was going. So I think there's still work to be there, but I think we're making progress there.
Oh, yeah, it looks 1,000% better. It's a fluid and it looks way better. I would respectfully disagree, but it's always going to be fluid and updated. But I would say it's much better and much more updated than historic. We keep saying historically. I think what you mean is previous administration, not current, but it will be fluid and continually updated.
Derek, you have to understand, we have a lot on our plates. Every department does at this point, and trying to keep everything updated is going to be a challenge all over the place. And we just don't want to make our city look like we're not doing our jobs correctly. And why add something else to our plate that is questionable? And plus, it's a $60,000 match.
My only point was we keep saying historically, which I think historically is not
I didn't say historically.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
saying what's going on now.
right. And now is much better than historically is my point. That's all.
Well, I did have a question, Derek, because didn't we at some point early in the pandemic authorize like a citywide texting app?
You did
that you guys wanted to
CityBot, which was free. We got that. Yes, that was a free app during the pandemic. I didn't bring that to you as a paid subscription because I felt during 2020, obviously, that
Right.
it wouldn't
Yeah,
be a
and it would be a paid subscription if we were to continue with it, but we
Yeah.
never did get an update. How did that work out?
That worked out pretty well for over the month or two that we used it. I can give you the data towards that. We did talk about that, and at the one council meeting, we gave updates on the data. So it went well, but that was strictly to send out, mass text related to COVID and the pandemic.
Right.
It does have other aspects to it. I mean, obviously I could bring it back if that's something we want to explore, but again, that's going to be, it's pricey and
Right.
that one was specifically for the free piece, the free content that we used at the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah.
not the paid portion.
No, I remember. I mean, I remember that we didn't pay for it. That wasn't really my concern. My concern is how do we utilize these things?
Right, we did utilize
yeah.
that, yes.
Right. So, I mean, because like I said, these signs would theoretically be about revenue neutral for the city if the earnings are on a par with what Mr. Cohen estimates. So once again, that argument, that's not as big an issue, assuming that we hit that revenue mark. But the question is then, do we use it? And we are putting them obviously out in the neighborhoods, and we are advertising, allowing SUFA signs to sell advertising that will be seen by our constituency, which is, of some concern, of course. But the financial element's another concern. If we don't need to worry about that, then, the question is, can we utilize this to our benefit? And that's what I'm trying to understand, I think, and a fight about whether or not, we all know the previous administration couldn't have done it. I simply have not seen any indication that we're doing it exceptionally well right now either. And so I'm trying to figure out what the plan is to make certain that we will. It's not that I've seen any indication that we're doing it poorly. I just haven't seen one that we're doing it well. So that's, I just, we need to see a plan that so that we know who's on tap for it. And then I think that changes the discussion, like we were saying. But yeah. Okay. So Bonnie, Adam, I think what I'm hearing is maybe a no recommendation, or what are you comfortable with here?
No or negative. I'm flexible on either of those.
Same here.
What do you guys make a motion? I don't know that I would go with a negative recommendation, but I would certainly back a no recommendation.
I'll make a motion that we pass it with a no recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and it's behind us. Mr. Cohen, Ms. Evans, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else, thank you for hanging around. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Take
Okay.
care.
All right, moving back up to the beginning of the agenda, Mr. Pavlak. Item number 1, a transfer ordinance number 2 in first reading. Joe?
Hello. Um, I'm sorry, my screen's breaking up. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you fine, Joe. Are
I
you
can
hearing
hear
me?
you, but your screen is frozen.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening with that.
There
but
you go.
Okay.
Well, it keeps, yeah, your screen keeps freezing, but I can hear you fine.
Um, so the first one's a transfer ordinance. This is the second transfer ordinance for the general fund for the 2021 budget. This transfer includes items that were discussed and approved at our meeting 2 weeks ago, mainly the change order for Bowman Field scoreboard project and the ADA consulting expenses that we were expecting with the two individuals that the mayor brought forward at the previous meeting. There was discussion with the treasurer, and he is looking for an additional $10,000 in legal services. I believe that Nick is here to discuss any questions with that, but to my knowledge, that relates to additional work in some of the audits and work that our consultants are doing relating to collecting additional taxes for business privilege and mercantile. I guess with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Great, thanks. Nick, did you want to address that now, or do you want to wait for questions?
Either one, whatever is best for you.
Why don't you go ahead and address it now, just so we.
Okay, so our legal services, which is really contract services for auditing and legal services, will be over budget for the year. Our equipment's a little less than we expected. We didn't need as much help with some of our newer software as we expected. So there's money there to be transferred, but just really, we've had over $70,000 collected through audits that have been done. Some of those take a little bit of time. So there's actually, a gain here for the city with revenue. And then we have another audit in excess of $70,000 that's being litigated right now, which takes some time. And then a couple other audits, probably about $10,000 still outstanding. So there are some costs there, but it all results in revenue.
Okay. That's always nice to hear. Bonnie, Adam, do you have any questions?
I don't.
No, I don't have any questions either. We kind of hashed this out 2 weeks ago between finance and the full council meeting, so I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think the only question I have, Joe, is that I thought that the scoreboard expense that we needed to meet the foundation expense was $64,000.
It was, I rounded
Okay.
up. So
Just making sure that it hasn't gone up so far.
no, you've approved 64.
Okay. And the savings in public works salaries is related to
The director position, and Adam Winder did confirm that the equipment would not arrive, or the equipment in the amount of 50,000 would not arrive until 2022. So that will need to be included as we work through the 2022 budget.
Got it. Okay. I guess I'm just nervous because we may be seeing savings in the public works salary line, but won't we need to pay those savings out in to RVT for Adam Windish services managing the department?
I don't believe so. He's not working full time, so there would not be a full time. That's why I tried to take as much as I could out of the equipment and.
So you're saying benefits, etc. No.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Got it. Okay, I understand the logic then. All right. In that case, I think those are all the questions I have. Bonnie or Adam, you want to? Or
Can we
anyone else have a question?
Liz, can we clarify that with Joe? Are we being charged, charged back Adam Winter's salary for anything he has done for the city?
That's my understanding, that RVT is invoicing the city for any of their employee staff time, salaries and benefits for the actual hours worked at an hourly rate, at their hourly rate.
Okay, so how much is this? Okay, when you did the salaries, how much of that usage is from that line item then? Because we also have IT that we've been using, and I don't know of other departments that have been using anybody from RVT, but I'm assuming we also have some employees from RVT that have been doing some street work also. Has
Yeah.
all of that been being charged back to the city?
I'm not involved in the discussions as to who's doing work for whom. I will wait for the bills to come in from RVT, and then at that point, we'll assign them to the departments that utilize those services.
So right now, we really don't know all that's being charged back to the city. We have no rhyme or reason. This has been going on for a year now, so almost a year.
I need to go back and look at the last reimbursement that was made based on the invoices received from RVT, as to see how far ahead we are, or how much time we're waiting for.
Okay, I know it's a lot of work, Joe. It's been, and it would be nice if we had a director for streets and parks, an IT person, so on and so forth, that we don't have to worry about you doing chargebacks.
I'm
That's
not
all I
doing
have.
that. That's being done at RVT.
It's still in all, it's extra work.
Yeah, Bonnie, I think so. I think part of your concern, I mean, at least part of my concern is, I remember back in April when we were presented with RVT's budget and their salary breakout, they had a billable rate per, mainly on the administrative side, but I think it was across the board actually, of what would be charged back per hour to the city. And some of those hourly rates are pretty high. And, you know, that's based on, I believe, you know, state and federal law. So, I mean, the rates aren't in question, but, you know, that certainly could potentially put us in a position where we're only getting half the level of time for things, but potentially spending 75 or 80 or 90% of an allotment of salary. So it's the potential of it not being an efficient system is there. I think, Bonnie, what you're asking is, you know, I think we need to understand and just see what that looks like to make sure that we're not putting ourselves into a hole. That's at least where my head is at whenever you say that, and I would agree with that.
That's exactly where I'm coming from, Adam.
Yeah.
We don't know how much we're spending at this point.
Yeah. So, you know,
I think that there's a bigger conversation there, but in regards to the salaries, there's also a contract service line item in the Public Works Department, the Director Department. So there is a fallback there for Mr. Winter's time.
Yeah. So, yeah, related to this specific ordinance, I feel confident that we're okay, because Joe, based on what you're saying, Joe. So that's all fine and dandy, but again, it just raises a number of questions that would be really good to know. You know, and there's data out there. There's billing that RVT is doing to the city. There are time studies that RVT should be doing on a continual basis that we could even see monthly or quarterly as they progress. That all would be very good to see, quite frankly. The time study that was sent out the end of their fiscal year was very helpful in trying to understand the intricacies of the MTA agreement, for example. You know, it's all good information. I think seeing it more and more consistently answers a lot of these questions and eases some of these concerns, or validates them. We don't know. And that's all I've got. Sorry.
No, that's yeah. I think we have a lot of huge financial questions this year, some of which could be answered. Items like this that let us know approximately how much time and how much money we're using through RVT right now. You know, some of them will remain up in the air for a while yet, but these ones we could settle, and we should work on that so that we understand a little better where we're at going forward. You know, some of the other questions relating to you know, the city hall's move and the financials on that, and specifically when we see a contract for a, you know, a lease agreement for the premises, where we'll be taking that money from. Those questions are things we need to sort out ASAP, even if we have some larger kind of looming financial stuff that we can't necessarily sort out quite that quickly. But all of that said, this transfer ordinance does seem somewhat cut and dried. We will, I think, need to stay on top of the whole idea of how much more out of public works and streets departments we need to find for Adam Winder's to compensate RVT for Adam Winder's time. And I think we do need to sort that out as soon as we can, or at least we need to sort out whether or not the contract services line item will cover that that money moving forward. Okay, but do I hear a motion on the item before us, guys?
I make a motion, we forward to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Then item number 2 on our agenda, we're making so much progress, is, excuse me as I get back to that screen here, resolution for the minimum municipal obligation for the year ending 2022. Mr. Pavlak, back at you.
Yeah, this is an annual resolution to approve the city's minimum municipal pension obligation for the upcoming calendar year. The city is required by September 30th to adopt the MMO for each of the 3 cities' pension funds. The actuary has pulled the gut numbers together, and what they're indicating is that for 2022, based on our 2019 actuarial valuations, the fireman's pension fund will need to contribute $1,180,775. The police pension fund will need to contribute $1,844,797, and the officers and employees pension fund will need to contribute $1,112,969. That brings our total MMO for 2022 to $4,140,563. I would like to point out that this number is approximately $1 million below our 2021 or our current year valuation, and that is a result of I'm sure you've heard it in the past, the mortgage payments or the amortization payments within the MMO. There have been a few that have expired in the fire and the officers and employees pension funds, therefore bringing their annual required contribution down some bit. So with that being said, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thanks, Joe. So just to be clear, because these amortization payments have expired, unless any new ones are implemented, we're likely to see the same savings in the years following, correct?
That's correct.
There are a lot of variables, I know, but
yeah, the amortization payments are based on assumption changes. Whether you've met your interest expectations. Over the past number of years, those that have attended the quarterly pension reviews should note that in the past 2 years, I think we were around 18 or 19% returns for 2019, and the 2020 returns for the year were ranging in the 6 to 7 mark. So if you look at that with our assumptions within the plan of 7 or 7.5, we're pretty close to that. So we should possibly see some interest gains, which could potentially reduce this, but we also have to factor in any assumption changes that the actuary is requesting with our 2021 valuation, which could, offset any of those gains that we might be able to recognize. So there's a variety of factors right now based on, the gains that we've seen over the last 2 years. We're expecting it to stay pretty flat, but yeah. We'll just have to wait to see till the final numbers come in.
hard to say. So to put that potentially in somewhat plainer English, if I might, real quick, Joe. But I'm not sure if I will succeed in that. The whole concept of an assumption is we assume on an annual basis that our pension plans will earn some of them 7%, some of them 7.5%. And in some years, we don't meet that assumption. In some years, we exceed that assumption. We did recently, it seems to me maybe 2, possibly 3 years ago, we lowered our assumptions. That is to say, we took, we lowered our assumptions from, I want to say, 7.75% and 7.5% to 7 and 7.5 respectively. And that action increased our contribution to the pensions because we assumed a lower rate of return. So we had to put in more money up front to wind up with the final amount in our pension plan that we need to have to cover pensions for all of our employees.
We're close there. Because we didn't meet our returns when gains were low, we have to make up those gains, and that puts more into that we're required to put into our MMO to meet the gains that we were expecting. Does that make sense?
Well, exactly. So we have in the past borrowed from Peter to pay Paul, effectively, and now
Right.
we're
and the other side of it's not just on the interest and the returns of the plans. There's also the mortality tables and things of that nature. So if people are living longer, if people are living shorter, that can fluctuate the amounts that were required, because we may need to fund people longer now than we previously expected as people live longer.
Yes, precisely. Yeah, and as our retirement ages don't increase, so so I'll make the point. I think of Dr. Williamson, who used to be the president of council a couple of years ago, not much more than a couple of times a year at this point, but I always think of him when the MMO comes around, because his point annually is this is the minimum amount that we have to contribute to our pension plans. If we manage to contribute more money than this to our pension plans, we would achieve a full funding status more quickly and decrease our obligations substantially. That said, of course, every year, between a number of unfortunate financial rocks and hard places, we have never, in my experience, chosen to contribute more than the minimum municipal obligation to the MMO. But we did at one point choose to decrease the percent that we were assuming we would make, which will increase our contribution in one way rather than another. And that might be something we could consider this year, depending on the recommendations of the actuary. That said, Bonnie and Adam, do you have any points to make about this?
You made them. Thanks.
There you go. I hope I made them cogently so that everybody out there understands, but probably not.
Good going, Liz. That was great.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is not an item, while the Finance Committee could theoretically fail to recommend this to the full body of council, and council could theoretically vote against it, there would be no practical effect of that, because we have to contribute this much money to our pension plan. That is simply the dictate. And when we get our 2021 valuations later on this year, they will dictate, they will play a part in the calculation that gives us our minimum municipal obligation for 2023. Joe, correct? I'm not lying, right?
That's correct. The 2021 valuation will be used for next year's. If we, look at the 2021's valuation, the 2021's valuations impact on the 2022 MMO. We have the right to amend the 2022 MMO up and through the approval of the budget.
Great. All right. By which Joe means we could increase it, but not necessarily decrease it, correct?
We could do either. We can amend the MMO up until the time the budget's finalized.
Okay. But if we decreased it, what would the effect of that be, Joe?
I guess it'd be matching what they expect with the 2021's valuation, what our actual requirements are.
Okay.
It won't, I guess, and speaking it with, some of your comments earlier, Jonathan's comment that we could always put more into at that point with the 2021 valuation. If it lowered the MMO, we'd be putting more in if we kept the one based on the 2019 valuation versus the 2021. So Yes, we need to evaluate the numbers when they come in and make a decision as to what we want to do, something, nothing, or something in between.
Got it. Okay, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it then, I guess. In the meantime, Bonnie, Adam, you want to make a motion?
I make a
One more quick
Oh,
question.
Sorry,
Joe,
Adam.
no, it just came to me. Joe, do we know the remaining balance? I don't remember this from our pension board meetings or reviews. Do we know the outstanding balance that would get us to having our pension fully funded? I know we're like, I think 90-ish%. We're in really good shape.
I don't know about that 90-ish. You're talking about our funded ratio for that. I can get that for Thursday. I have them here, but I have to dig through the.
Yeah, that's okay. It just came to mind because I mean that if we're gonna have that discussion and make that decision that Liz had pointed to.
Police is 86.
Okay.
Sorry,
80s.
Yeah, I want to say we're mid 80s for all of them,
Okay.
but I just found police, that was 86.
Okay. Okay.
81 for fire.
Okay. Yeah, knowing what that number to get to 100% across the board would be, we're not going to have that much money. I mean, I understand that, but knowing what that looks like helps, I think, aid the decision if we're able to even make that decision this year or in any year, you know? So that's the only thing that came, that's the only thought that came to mind.
All right. Very true. Okay, excellent observations all around. And I guess, do I hear a motion to pass this on to the full body of council?
I make a motion, we pass it on to full body council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, moving on then. Now we're getting somewhere, all the way down to item number 4. Let's see here. Mr. Pavlak, I have an unfortunate feeling that we might be dealing with the second quarter packet you gave us last 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now. I'm sorry to say that, but I know that we do have another meeting coming up here at 2:30 and we're likely to be late for that as well. Okay, item number 4 on our agenda, a resolution accepting a contract for audit services with Zelenovsky Axford LLC. Ms. Woodring? Is Peg out there anywhere, guys?
Josh, you'll need to unmute her.
I don't see Peg, but there is somebody dialed in.
She's the one that's called
That's
in.
Peg. Yeah, that's Peg. Peg?
She mutes on her phone, so she needs to be unmuted through Zoom.
Okay. Is anybody in a position to run over and poke her?
No. I think that Josh can do that.
I can request that she unmutes, but
There it is. There she is.
Am I on now?
Yes.
Okay. Attached for your consideration is a resolution to accept a proposal and contract from Zelenovsky Axelrod LLC to provide professional auditing service for the years ending December 31st, 2019, 2020, and 2021 in the amount of $86,600 for 2019, $88,950 for 2020, and $91,425 for the year 2021. This was reviewed by Mr. Lubin, and I've also spoken to the County of York Deputy Controller, and he highly recommended this firm.
Great. That's terrific to hear. Adam, Bonnie, questions?
I just find it interesting that the costs are lower to go back into our figures and then the price keeps on escalating here. It's not escalating, but gets higher. Peg, did they tell you how much it's going to be for the, is this what the cost is going to be for 2022, do you think, or are we going to, the price going to still keep on going up?
That I don't know. Generally, each year, even for Baker Tilly, it did go up a certain amount.
This looks like it's probably about 10%. What am I looking at here? What kind of percentage are we going up here? I don't have a calculator.
No, it's less than that, Bonnie. It's about 5%.
Yeah.
5%.
Yeah, maybe even a little less. But yeah.
It is what it is. You know, we have to have an auditor.
Yeah, I'd say it's actually, we're probably looking at more like 3% there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys, because I didn't have a calculator. See, I have to have a calculator. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. But still, and yeah, I would anticipate in the same way that our wages in the city generally go up around 3% a year, you know, that probably the cost will continue to go up.
That isn't bad then.
Yeah, the wages maybe go up the same amount. But I think it is important to note that Ms. Woodring, this contract officially ends after 2021, correct? So they would be auditing 2021 in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
We would pass that audit, Mr. Pavlak, by September 30th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
And okay, and then oh, sorry, Peg, I'm used to Joe telling me when we have to have it in by. And then we would, so practically speaking, next year we will need to do a new RFP for auditing services for 2022, 23, and 24 or something like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Which actually brings me to a quick question that I had, Peg, which was the clause in the resolution, whereas the City Council of the City of Williamsport shall have the right to terminate the agreement with written notification prior to November 31st of any years of the agreement for unsatisfactory performance of the scope of the proposal. Practically speaking, what does that mean in this context? Since we're asking to complete 2 audits for years that are already passed.
Joe, I'm not used to doing this, but maybe Joe could answer that.
Mr. Pavlak, you still out there?
All that I can say is I submitted to the controller an RFP that was used in a prior situation.
Got it.
So perhaps that's something that got left as she was sending it out.
Perhaps we should strike that. I mean, I guess what I'm wondering.
I'm not sure what you're looking at. I haven't been keeping up with this.
This is the resolution, Joe, sorry. In the resolution, it says that we have the right to terminate the contract by November 31st of any year if we're dissatisfied with performance on prior year audits. But we're looking at 2 prior year audits, then that November 31st deadline has obviously passed for both of those. So I'm not really certain what that termination, what that does for us in this context. But we can always strike that or modify it.
I don't.
Bonnie, yeah.
Yeah, I would be, Liz, I'd be curious to see what that would look. I mean, this is a unique situation where like to your point, we're doing previous years where that date has already gone by. I would be interested to see what that would look like given the uniqueness of the situation. 99% of the time, that language is more than sufficient, I think, for what any municipality would run into and what we normally would. It doesn't quite. So I think
they'll be doing 3 audits simultaneously.
Yeah.
The city effectively.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if it means we need to modify it. I mean, and again, this is if Norm reviewed this would be a really good question, I think, for Norm that I'd like to know for Thursday. But you know, I guess given the uniqueness of the situation, what should that terminology be? Right. I like having it there. I just it's a little bit of a quagmire for this application.
Yeah. Yeah, Peg, I would say we should ask Norm. I mean, I don't really see a termination clause in the contract that we've been sent. It's specific as such. So I think that would be the question for Norm is,
Okay, I can speak
what
to
does,
Norm.
you know, it's a pretty minor question. Otherwise, everything looks pretty good. But
Okay.
what does what does termination look like if this company is doing 3 simultaneous audits for the city?
Yeah.
And how do we ask to retain any information not specifically, any info, like, I think if we were for some reason to terminate this contract, which, Lord, I hope that doesn't happen, but if we were, how do we make certain that we retain any information, any documentation they've prepared up to the point when we terminate?
Okay, I'll speak to
First
Norm
attempt to
tomorrow.
resolve the dispute, sorry, I'm just, okay. 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 Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that allowed, or I don't see that called out really anywhere specific. Was just checking to see if I'd missed it somehow. Yeah, so it seems to be mainly codified in the resolution, and obviously the codification that's in the resolution won't do for our specific situation.
I know
So let's see if
something was mentioned in the proposal, but this contract, I'm looking to see if anything's in there, but I don't.
Yeah, I see some items related to mediation, but nothing related to termination, us keeping some, retaining data prepared by the firm or anything like that. And obviously no specifics in terms of terminating if that would be a necessity. Okay. Bonnie, Adam, do you have any other questions? I apologize for waiting in there with mine.
No, that was my only question as well. So thanks for asking it.
Got it. Bonnie, anything further?
No.
Okay. Then I would suggest that we forward this to the full body of council with a positive recommendation pending input from Norm and possibly Zelenovsky for Thursday night on termination and data retention.
Yeah, I'll make a motion before the full body council with a positive recommendation, with the caveat of clearing up the termination language and data collection with our solicitor and the accounting firm.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Peg, for bringing this to us with contract, et cetera. Okay. Moving on to and that takes care of everything. We'll see you on Thursday. Just try and get that info for us by Thursday, okay?
Okay, will.
Thanks, Peg. All right. Item number 5 on our agenda today is a finance report on recreation. Ms. Drummond.
Hello.
You want to talk? Oh, okay. And she's right there. Hi, Kayla. How you doing?
I'm well. How's everybody?
Great. Thanks.
So I wasn't aware I was on this meeting. I got called Friday and asked to join on. So I'm open to answer any questions you guys have for me.
Okay. So I think what we're looking to see, Kayla, and this might be the sort of thing that we'll need to discuss then again in 2 weeks' time, is we're looking for a report on this year's recreation program. We know that it was minus the pool, but the recreation programming that we have in the parks, we were looking to understand sort of how it was handled. And then specifically, this being the finance committee, we want to understand the financials of it. That is to say, were we under or over budget on all of the line items within the budget? How did we fare on salaries? I know that we hired those, or that we pulled in 7 AmeriCorps members. So theoretically, we should be fairly dramatically under budget on salaries within the recreation programming budget. And then, supplies and all of that. So I don't know if you have that information for us, or if you'd like to compile it, maybe send it to us so we can review it, and then we can discuss it in 2 weeks' time.
I have a lot of it. The only thing I do not have completed at this moment is the salary line item. Everything else is completed. I just got finalized from Joe, so I haven't been able to, everything else is finalized except for salary line item. But as far as the summer program, we never break even. The rate that we charge people on a weekly fee for our campers is significantly lower.
Yeah, no, we're not asking if you broke even, Kayla. That's not an expectation with either the pool or the summer program. That's something the city operates, and we understand that it costs the city money. What I'm asking is, are you within the budget that we established last year?
The only thing I went over with was transportation and we put it under their program, the camp program, only because we had to pay Loyal Sock to utilize their pool this year. Years prior, we didn't. We used our own pool.
Okay, so we had additional costs for transportation, which we were paying to RBT, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay. Related to using Loyal Sock pool versus using Williamsport's pool?
Correct.
Okay. And everything else is within budget, under budget?
Yes. Everything else is within budget. Actually, a couple of them were under budget by close to almost $1,000 or more.
And that includes salaries?
That does not include salaries. That's the only line item that I do not have completed at this moment.
All right, then why don't we move this agenda item to 2 weeks out? And if you could possibly send us when you have all the financials
Okay.
on the summer programs, send us the financials. And then I think the other thing that we'll want to talk about a little bit is just sort of how many children we served, how everything went using STEP, whether or not that's something we can anticipate doing again next year, whether that was a one-off situation, what sorts of services we're providing to campers, and to what extent we should look at adding new programming, just kind of a state of the program discussion, I think, but with the focus on financials and understanding whether or not we met our budgets. Okay.
Understand.
And
All
can
right.
we add,
Bonnie, Adam, anything to add to that?
yes, can we add on what special events brought in?
Yes, I will add that on.
Okay.
Okay. But that'll just be, we still have a handful of special events to come up yet this year, correct, Kayla?
Yes.
Although none of those are big earners.
Yes, we have about 3-4 more.
Okay. So I
The
guess
ones that
Bonnie,
are left
you're
are the ones that are
asking
going to cost us money though, right, Kayla?
Yeah.
Yes and no. Yes, most of them. The last one is the Festival of Lights in Brandon Park, where we actually bring in some money with that because it's the holiday market, so we have a vendor fee.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so yeah, I guess it'd be good to get a snapshot of where we're at with special event expenditures versus income as well, Kayla. I know that we had, I think we were expecting to make maybe 20,000 on special events. Like, I'd have to go back to the budget to remind
As I
myself.
said, I believe
but,
it was closer to 10 is
okay.
what I was told.
Okay. Yeah,
But I will round up all of that. I was, like I said, it was last minute. I got called Friday and they said just about summer camp finances. So I will definitely get all
Yeah, well,
special events.
I think that was the main discussion, but Bonnie's right. We might as well have a look at everything, I suppose.
Okay.
Okay. Adam, did you have anything further that you wanted to discuss so that we can give Kayla some clear guidance for 2 weeks' time?
No, that sounds like you covered it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then this was just a discussion item anyway. So I guess we can move on to item number 6, which is second quarter financial statements. Given that Bonnie's 7 minutes late for the Public Works meeting, do we want to delay discussion of those for another 2 weeks, guys?
If it's not too
Yes.
frustrating for Joe, I would like to also. I have to run, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay, Joe, are we okay with that?
The reports are out there. I guess if there's
Yeah.
any questions, I invite people to contact me with questions, and I can answer them. Perhaps,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like having a public discussion of it, Joe. And I think it's important to have a public discussion of it. I just also think we need to be.
Well,
as
my
respectful.
recommendation was going to be then that the following meeting, the last meeting November, which should be 2 meetings out, that we would be into the third quarter. So I just my thoughts. And if you want to handle them back to back, that's fine too.
Got it. I think we've just